So we will start this portion of the meeting, which is on landscape water conservation, with about a 4-minute video abstract on some of the work that has been going on up at Utah State on water conservation.
The Center for Water Efficient Landscaping was created in 1999 in cooperation with the state of Utah's legislature. The goal was to reduce outdoor water use and irrigation of amenity landscapes. Since the early 90s, there's been a steady decline in indoor water use. But when you move outside the home, things get significantly more challenging. We are the second driest state in the nation in terms of precipitation. We also have some of the higher per capita water use rates in the country. One of the efforts that's being made in the state right now is a media campaign called Slow the Flow, and that's being driven by the Division of Water Resources as well as a number of the Water Conservancy districts. And one of the main goals of that program is to create a conservation ethic in the state of Utah.
We're interested in water conservation in basically all of the communities of the state. What kinds of plants should we use? We don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that a landscape should be entirely native.
Design is fundamental, and you can arrange plants, particularly at lower density where they use less water. There's common ground between visual traits that allows a plant to survive in a desert that are oftentimes very aesthetically pleasing too.
Our goal is not to see how much plant we can produce, but see if we can attain our quality of life or the aesthetic values that we desire.
You can look at any town along the Wasatch Front and see a sea change in the number of low water use landscapes.
How do we get people to interact with their landscape and their irrigation system so that they're being efficient?
We really look at both how they understand and how they perceive their landscapes, and then the behaviors and actions and decisions that they take in relation to maintaining them.
We take the information that's made available through the university and take it out to consumers and the general public.
It's a lot of moving parts. So we can help filter that down and, given the specific goals of the end user, help them make informed choices that serve society at large.
We're in an era where water has been over-allocated, and we're in the process of reallocating that water.
I guess in a lot of ways, kind of identifying what it is people really want out of the landscape and then coming up with the best fit for that with a very strong emphasis on water conservation.
Water maps developed in a research environment. It's been used as a research tool, a management tool, and a public information tool. And we developed this technique to identify relative efficiencies of different users so that we could explain their behaviors in relation to that use. To really affect change among people, they need to be able to see it, to reflect on it, to have it be timely, and to have it be in tune with the decisions that they need to make. People in Utah are very well-meaning, and when it's brought to their attention that they have the capacity to conserve water without sacrificing their landscapes and maintaining the aesthetic qualities, they are more than willing to do so.
Okay, a little bit of a change in the agenda. Roger thought I might fit better going after that video abstract. My name is Kelly Kopp, and I'm a professor in the Plant, Soils, and Climate Department at Utah State University. And I'm also, and I think somewhat more importantly for today's discussion, a USU Extension Specialist, which means that a huge part of my job is extending the research-based information that we develop at the university to the public and to other clientele groups, and that would include folks like you in this audience, water suppliers, water wholesalers, utilities, etc. And so that's a very, very large part of what I do as an extension specialist and as a member of the Center for Water Efficient Landscaping. The program that I'm going to be talking about this morning that I want to emphasize as part of my work is the Water Check program. And this is a program that has a fairly long history in the state. It was initiated in 1999 by Dr. Earl Jackson, who at the time was an extension agent in Salt Lake County. And I think he was very forward-thinking in approaching some of the water agencies in the state to develop a program that was very hands-on, very directed toward individual citizens as well as other landscape managers on how their irrigation systems functioned, how efficient they were, and identifying opportunities for conservation with those irrigation systems. The Center for Water Efficient Landscaping began working with the program in 2005 and has continued that up to this point. For those of you who may be a little less familiar with the program, this is a program that we have done with the support and collaboration of several water agencies in the state, including Metropolitan Water Conservancy District, Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District, as well as Central Utah Water Conservancy District. And because of their support for the program, it is zero cost to participants, and those participants participate voluntarily. And we then send pairs of interns to residences in the state, as well as commercial, industrial, and institutional properties to evaluate outdoor irrigation systems. And it goes beyond that because we also end up doing a lot of intensive landscape evaluation, I would call it. It's a very detailed landscape consultation in many ways. And so to date, we've performed more than 14,000 water checks on residential properties and 400 commercial, industrial, and institutional properties in the state. And so what this represents to me, and I think as it relates well to the conversation today, is an enormous amount of information about landscapes in the state of Utah. These are landscapes, as I said, starting in 1999 to present day. And what do those landscapes look like, and what sorts of issues do we see in those landscapes? And particularly for those of you in the wholesale and retail area, how does that information then inform some of your conservation programs? Does it encourage you to incentivize certain products, for example? So hopefully we can have that discussion here today. Okay, just some additional aspects of the program. I want to try to give you a sense of the amount and detail of data that we collect with the program. Certainly, first and foremost, and this is what most folks think about with the Water Check program, we collect information on the efficiency of irrigation systems. So how efficiently is the water from the irrigation system applied to the site? And as you can see there, we break it out depending on the type of irrigation, whether that's fixed spray heads or rotor heads, and then how uniformly that water is distributed. So we collect this for every property that we evaluate. And then we also collect information about the precipitation rates of those various types of sprinklers, whether they're fixed or rotors, and how those are distributed across all of the properties that we evaluate. And then we also get into modeling. I'm hearing modeling, 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 and that even applies to the Water Check program. So we are able to use aspects of our data, such as landscaped area and parcel size, to get a sense of how much of given properties in the state are actually landscaped, and then relate that to how much of those properties is actually irrigated. So that gives us a really good sense of what landscapes look like in the state, how much irrigation they might require, and then how we can interact with folks to help them be more efficient with those landscapes. Now, these are just a couple of pieces of data that we collect with the program. We also collect a significant amount of data about the landscapes in terms of what area is turf grass, what area is ornamental landscape, what area is hardscape, what area is non-permeable irrigated, non-irrigated landscape. So we really break it down in great detail, which again helps us relate how much water is being used on the property for that landscape and whether or not it is efficient. In addition, we also collect information about problems we see on the landscape that relate to irrigation efficiency. For example, are there areas that could be mulched? Are there certain problems with sprinklers? For example, are sprinkler heads tilted? Are they sunken? Are they clogged? And what we're now in the process of doing with some of the additional database capabilities that we have is evaluating that information and relating it to losses in system efficiency. And so related to our increased database capabilities, we were able to, beginning in 2014 and continuing into 2015, to develop an iPad-based app, and this is now in use by our water check interns. And what this really has done is brought the program into the 21st century. We were chugging along for many, many years, but not really making great strides forwards in terms of technology. And so for me, this is one of the most exciting things that we're doing with the program right now. And what it allows us to do is collect information from the program participant, whether it's a residence or a commercial, institutional, industrial user, and have that information immediately archived to our database. So you can see here, these are just screenshots of what the app looks like. We can start a new check wherever we may be, enter the participant's information, get a digital signature for collecting the information. And then we have very, very detailed screens that go into all of the various aspects of the different controllers that are being used, the irrigation programs that have been used. This is where we might note problems, dry spots, misdirected heads, etc. And then we keep information about the rooting depth of the plant material, the soils, etc. And then following all of that information about the landscape, we'll actually go through and perform several catch-cup tests on the property, and that's where we would be collecting information and gathering distribution uniformity. One of the really great things for me, particularly because we're working with interns who have varying capabilities in terms of math, but I guess more importantly, how detail-oriented they might be, what this does is it takes all of the calculations and automates it. So it speeds up the process. We're able to accomplish more checks in a shorter period of time, and it's reducing error for our water check interns. This is another aspect of the program that I think is very interesting in terms of the data that we collect. So landscaped area, we're able to take some of the calculation out of that process as well. Again, getting detailed information about how much turf area is typically in these landscapes, how much ornamental area, etc. And then finally, we go through a process of viewing the report with the participant on site. And then that report, once the data is uploaded, will also be emailed to them. Now, we're, just as a bit of an aside, but we're very aware that not everyone, although it's becoming less and less, will have email. So we still have the ability to provide them with paper reports should they choose that. But the goal here really is twofold. Streamline the process for our water checkers and improve the quality of the data that they collect, and then provide that information to the participant almost immediately. What I don't have here is a list of the additional information that we can provide them. So if, in addition to the report, they want information about particular plant material or irrigation system maintenance, we're also able to provide that to them electronically as part of the report. So we're giving them customized information. We're archiving that information to our database almost immediately, and we're having greater quality control of that data. In conjunction with the app, we've also undergone an extensive update of our database, which was originally an Access database. So we've moved it to a structured query database, a SQL database. And this is a standard that's typically being used these days in terms of database. And what it's allowing us to do is accept that data that we collect with the app remotely. So we may have several teams of water checkers in the field, but now as soon as they reach a Wi-Fi connection, they're able to upload that to the database. And this is going to allow us to generate custom reports, both for the participants, which I was just describing a little bit, but also for program administrators. So for example, this is a screenshot. I didn't want to risk a live internet connection, but this is a screenshot of the customized reports that an administrator might be able to access. So this is 1 week in the Salt Lake City Public Utility Service area. What you see here are the locations of the checks that occurred, the average square footage of turf, irrigated area, hardscape, etc. And then here are details about all the different kinds of landscape and irrigation problems that we identified. If this were live, we could scroll over each of these points, and it would tell us how many zones that we saw, how many irrigation zones that we saw those various problems in. So this is the kind of information that I think is interesting and could be useful to folks like you, because again, it might help you decide where you want to focus your efforts. Do you want to focus your efforts on, for example, educating folks about mismatched plant types, or different sorts of irrigation maintenance prospects so that folks can improve their efficiency? I think there is literally a mountain of data around this program at this point. And so because of the increased capabilities that we have with the database, we're able to really start digging into it to inform not only our programs, but hopefully yours as well. Some additional enhanced analyses that we are now able to do as well when we're able to connect this to water billing data. As an example, in 2013, our Salt Lake City participants were using about 25,000 gallons of irrigation monthly. So these are our water check participants. They're folks who called us for help. By comparison, the average single-family residence in the city was using 17,000 gallons. So this was a little bit surprising because folks sometimes think or assume that our water check participants are really just wanting a pat on the back. Oh boy, did I really take up that much time? Sorry. But what we found is that our participants were actually using more water than typical city residents. And what we also found when we followed them up subsequent years was that they were saving 7,900 gallons of water per month after they participated in the program. So now our task is to look at them year over year, see how long that savings goes on, and hopefully help them to maintain that savings with ongoing communications. So I want to extend a very, very heartfelt thanks to the agencies who have supported the program over the years. And I know I'm out of time, so I'm going to stop there. Sorry.